I remember doing every one of these segments. You're going to love this show. A nurse by the name of Suzanne is going to join us today. Lots of lung problems. What did she do to get herself out of those? You'll learn that. I'm going to open today's show with this. Could a ketogenic diet help people with asthma? A German study says yes. You'll want to watch this. Ketogenic and Kaufman diet are very, very similar. Covid-19 or histoplasmosis, virus or fungus? Or could it be both? You'll learn that. Finally, what does Doug feed his cat? Yeah, we inherited a cat. We have a grand cat. And this cat was very sick. We took her to 3 veterinarians. And they all said it's going to die. We changed her diet. Watch today's show. You'll learn.
For the past 45 years, I have dedicated my life and my whole career to finding the root cause of disease. And I now know with certainty that we must play a role in our own health care. I'm a self-care advocate. You know what? Every time you change your diet for the better, exercise, or swallow a nutritional supplement, so are you. Now welcome to Know the Cause.
I had a physician, a local physician, call me the other day, a couple of weeks ago, and say, Doug, I put a COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary patient on your diet. It's all I did. And 2 weeks later, she was breathing wonderfully. Folks, when it comes to asthma, all sorts of lung conditions, there's 100 diagnoses. We have to think about mold in a house. You're in a house half of your life, and if you breathe mold in a house, it's going to catch up to you. It'll align itself in your lungs, begin off-gassing these poisons called mycotoxins. And so I want to show you how medicine thinks, and then you'll better understand how I think. First of all, new paper just out, and here's what it says. A new diet for asthma. I was overwhelmed to read this. Asthma may appear to be a lung problem, but really it involves the gut. And I got to tell you, I think most diseases, I think cancers, I think diabetes, I think most autoimmune diseases begin here. Because a large 70% of your immune system, we used to think they were in lymph nodes, 70% of the old immune system is in the gut. Fix this, get your immune system working better. So I had to read this article, a new diet for asthma. It had to be an antifungal diet, or it just, to me, it wouldn't have been proper. Asthma risk associated with indoor mold contamination in Hispanic communities in eastern Coachella Valley. That's such a beautiful area out there near Palm Springs, California. The higher levels of mold contamination in their homes appeared to be associated with a greater risk of asthma or respiratory illness. That was an environmental journal here several years ago, 2 years ago. No kidding. So the more mold you have in your home, you can put Petri dishes out, the more their children, their animals had problems with breathing disorders. Once you get outside, you know, Mom, I must be allergic to the house, because once I go outside, I feel so much better. Then I come back in, have a horrible night. Do you and your whole family wake up? Do you wake up and have to spit in the morning? Think mold. How old is your pillow? You sweat? We all do on your pillow. You drool? We all do on our pillow. That moisture, the next time you hit that pillow, all those spores go in the air. How old is your mattress? Just things to think about. Okay, so this was a fascinating paper in that it showed us that the more mold exposure, the more breathing problems we have, okay? Here is the paper. German researchers suggest a special diet for asthma. According to the study, mice that were switched to a so-called, I love that so-called, ketogenic diet showed significant reduced inflammatory problems in the respiratory tract. The author stated, now get this, I hope you're sitting down. We are therefore trying to determine which components of the dietary changes are responsible for the effect. Maybe this will open the door to the development of new drugs. I kid you not. First of all, the ketogenic diet, my friend Alan has KetoMed, this product that he talks to you about all the time on this show. People are taking a scoop of that, mixing it with water, shooting it down in lieu, always check with your doctor, in lieu of a diet or a meal a couple times a day. Unbelievable how good things are going for them. Folks, this is lauric acid, caprylic acid. This is the keto, the original ketogenic diet. No sugars, no added stuff to it, the ketogenic diet. People with asthma are showing improvement, okay? You're starving fungus with the ketogenic diet, but what are they looking for? A new drug. We don't understand how this diet is working. I do. I've been at it 45 years. But maybe a new drug. This is the way the medical community thinks. If they can't reach in their pocket and scribble something on a piece of paper, you can't possibly get better. God bless them, folks. God bless them. They're good people. They learned in medical training that they need to reduce symptoms, not know the cause of asthma. Okay, so let's keep going. Once inhaled and implanted into the lungs, mold or fungi thrive in the presence of bread, cereals, grains, and other sugar forms, right? Often people with respiratory diseases like asthma crave these foods, enabling the fungus to be fed, and the asthma gets worse and worse and worse. And folks, these people are running from allergists to pediatrician to internal medicine specialists to pulmonologists. We don't know, but take this drug. It's so liberating to know how in charge of our health we are. Most of you don't know that. We learned from the time we were 5 years old, go into the doctor, and sometimes that's necessary. And sometimes drugs can be life-saving. At my age 70, I don't have a doctor. I'm not on drugs. But I do things different than most old guys, okay? So the ketogenic diet, you'll understand why it helped these people with asthma. No bread, no cereal, no grains, no sugar. One of the benefits, and I'll say many benefits, of the ketogenic diet is that it starves fungus. No wonder this diet is perfect for asthma and every other disease that is caused by fungus. Know the cause. It's important, folks, that you understand the Kaufman diet came in on the heels of the ketogenic diet. I'm a guy who says, I don't know if ketosis long-term for years and years is safe. You're supposed to burn carbohydrates for your fuel. You begin burning fat for your fuel in the state of ketosis. But I've got to tell you, between the Kaufman diet and the keto diet, asthma is just one of the conditions that I think can be helped. Oh, thank God for green rooms. Because Suzanne and I could go back there and talk while she was in makeup and I'm in makeup. Suzanne Gigliotti is a registered nurse. She has a master's degree in nursing, and she's got all these credentials. She's got more degrees than a thermometer. And she got sick. There is, in my humble opinion, no finer doctor or nurse in the world than one who got sick, and a prescription pad couldn't get them out of it. And yet, if we'd have known of antifungals back then, you may have. Did you run to doctors? You had a bronchopulmonary candidiasis, or it wasn't candidiasis,
no,
aspergillosis.
It was aspergillus, yes.
So tell us, how'd you get that?
So I came home from work one day, and there had been a problem with the AC units. I worked at a hospital, and this came out of the blue. I was breathing fine, although in hindsight I had a lot of neurological symptoms, which I'll tie in, but basically I couldn't stop coughing. And I did not understand what was happening to me, and I'm a nurse, so sometimes you just can't be your own nurse.
Right.
The long and the short of it is I went to bed, I couldn't lie down. My husband came home from work, he was very concerned, and I asked him if he could I told him what to do to percuss my back, because I felt like something was caught, and I coughed up, it looked like Satan. I don't know how else to describe it. It was a plug of mucus, unlike anything I'd ever seen, and I looked at my husband, and I showed it to him, and I said, I think I have lung cancer. And as all good nurses do, I began to feel it and photograph it and measure it, and I thought, this is really bad, and I'm going to go to urgent care in the morning and get an X-ray.
Did you go to?
I went,
okay.
And I showed them my picture. And they told me I had bronchitis. Now, at this point, I'm breathing okay. And I said, I don't think it's bronchitis. This doesn't feel like anything I've ever had. And right now, I'm breathing okay. And the doctor said, no, it's bronchitis. So he did a chest X-ray. He gave me a prescription for Levaquin. And as I'm arguing with him, I start coughing. I run in the bathroom where I knew there were specimen cups because I'd been there before. Right into the specimen cup. Another one comes out. I give it to him. He's resistant, and I basically strong-armed him into sending it out for culture.
Good.
And They did a gram stain,
Yep.
they did a culture, and it came back positive for Aspergillus flavus.
Did you, Aspergillus flavus, wow.
Yeah.
Did you know, did you suspect this was fungus?
Oh,
You
no.
thought it was cancer.
I thought it was cancer. I thought that was that rusty sputum.
Right.
And I didn't really understand the significance of Aspergillus because a nurse just doesn't know everything, though we
Yeah.
try.
How were you exposed to it? Looking back now, so folks, the last few years, she's worked with one of the top pulmonologists, a doctor who gets it, who understands that fungus grows in the lungs more than bacteria. Or it can. Pathogenic fungus overpopulates the bacteria. Every doctor says, well, it's just a little bacterial infection. Here's Levaquid, here's Cipro, you'll be better. What if it's a fungus? And that's what you now know. How were you exposed to that Aspergillus? Do you know?
Workplace.
Yeah, in
Workplace.
hospitals they call it nosocomial infection.
Yeah, well, there was a problem with the HVAC system, and at first nobody took it seriously. I just had to leave. I couldn't be in that environment anymore, and it took me a while being a few weeks. But when I went to my colleagues at work and showed them my culture, because I really did not know what to do, they all told me it's nothing. It's contamination from the lab. It's colonization. We don't treat that.
Can I ask you, you
Sure.
said you had some neurological symptoms. There was no big cough up beforehand. You just
No.
noticed, what neurological symptoms? Because when I worked in clinical nutrition with the doctors out here, I saw this all the time. What was going on?
Horrific neurological symptoms. Fatigue that I can't even describe to you, that I would go out to my car and sleep for the half hour I had for lunch, like a dead sleep. I had no sense of smell or taste. I had a constant burning in my nose, my mouth, and my throat. Probably the most disturbing was my short-term memory loss and my inability to do multi-step functions. And that's not good when you're a nurse and you're working with a computer.
You've since counseled hundreds of people. Do you see that often?
All the time.
Mold does that.
It does.
I am so glad you're on our team. I'm sorry for what you've been through, but I'm so glad that as a master's degree nurse, you now understand this. This is a valuable nurse. Thank you, Suzanne.
You're welcome.
For coming in today. Don't go away, friends. I'll be right back with more. Folks, you probably know this because I come to you every day on many stations. I tape these segments in advance. We are currently quarantined, however, the media can use their offices, so that's how we come here. Many of our employees are out doing work remotely, the editors and so forth, and we have a minimum crew here right now. So I'm recording this right now, and I want to talk to you about COVID, whatever that is or whatever that was. I'm recording this in April. So just know I'm speaking to you from April. Okay, so here's what I have figured out, and I think this is pretty big. And it may be totally wrong, but at least I get my word out. COVID-19 or histoplasmosis. One is a novel virus that has become a pandemic. The other is a fungus that kills people worldwide. But what do these two have in common? So I pondered and pondered. Remember, we all got time off now. And I began looking at this virus. And some amazing realizations came to me. Histoplasmosis is a fungus from bat and bird droppings, okay? It falls to the ground, this fungus dries up, the guano, and dust or rain blows it away, gone, okay? But I want to share this with you. You get sick by inhaling both COVID-19 and Histoplasma capsulatum, which is the fungus that causes histoplasmosis. People with compromised immune systems are more vulnerable to both of them. Their incubation period is identical, anywhere from 2 to 17 days. Both can cause ARDS, adult respiratory distress syndrome. Both can cause skin disorders. Both share nearly identical symptoms. When I read this part of it, I was looking at, okay, so you got chills and a fever, but I go way back with histoplasmosis. I mean, I've studied that for decades, and here comes this brand new virus, and I'm watching on TV. Well, these people have muscle aches that are horrible, a dry cough, they run a fever, you got to test their fever. It's tragic, folks, that so many died. It's tragic every year that people die of the flu. This is another flu, yet this one became a pandemic. Okay, I don't know in April what's going on yet. Someday maybe we'll have all the answers. I don't think we have them all now, but I want you to see the symptoms of both inhaling this fungus that comes from bat poop. Why do I keep saying that? Just go with me. And from inhaling the virus. Someone sneezes by you or something. Symptoms of COVID-19 and symptoms of this fungus. Fever, chills, headache, muscle aches, dry cough, chest discomfort, fatigue, sometimes adult respiratory distress syndrome, sometimes skin symptoms. I remember when this first came out, in January or February, I looked at histoplasmosis as a possible connection, but folks, they do sequencing on these viruses and they'd say, no, this isn't a fungus, this is a virus, right? And I thought, well, one of the real things you see very often with histoplasmosis is skin symptoms. And then 2 months into this, scientists are saying, with COVID, we're beginning to see skin symptoms. So the big question is, why do you think this is a fungus, Doug? If it's all over TV, it's a virus. Here we go. Is COVID-19 a virus? Ridiculous, would say the scientific community. Well, beginning in 2011, the U.S. funded Wuhan scientists. They began going into bat caves in China to study bats. You gotta be kidding me. By disrupting the soil in the bat caves, they were exposed to the very toxic airborne fungus, Histoplasma capsulatum, that causes the disease we call histoplasmosis. It is found in bat guano and dirt in the caves. They did fecal sample testing on the bats. Why? I have no idea. If you're looking for COVID, why would you go to bat poop? I have no idea, but they did. Bat guano exposed them to this dangerous fungus. Likely without their knowledge, I'm not pointing fingers, they returned to their lab covered with this fungus. When you disrupt it in the soil and they walked into the cave, it flew in the air. And even if they were covered up, it fell on their hats and their shoulders and so forth. Then they went back into their study laboratory where they had this virus. They began testing bat guano for COVID-19. Okay? Then this, genetic fusion. And this is done in nature. Genetic fusion enables two independent organisms, like histoplasma and COVID, to merge their DNA and RNA and form a brand new hybrid nucleic acid, the likes of which no one understands. Welcome to this COVID virus. How many times have we heard on TV, this doesn't behave like other ones? Is it because it's part DNA from fungus, part RNA from virus? Genetic fusion is real. It really happens, and it can happen in a laboratory without the laboratory personnel even knowing. Hope that helps. Sue asked the question, what food did you feed your cat? I tell this story about 2 years ago. Our cat got sick and my wife woke me up at 3 in the morning. Cat was vomiting and listless and just wasn't thriving at all. This was probably a 5-year-old cat at the time. We got up in the cold, drove 20 miles to an open all night veterinarian, and she got up and she looked at Cat and she said, well, bad news, it has thyroid disease. It's only got 3 months to live. Then we took it to this cat, to our regular veterinarian the next day, and he said the same thing. And then we took it to a holistic veterinarian, and he said, we can run IVs, but this cat probably has 3 to 6 months left to live. And then the question was asked, what would I do if this were one of the doctor's patients that came to see me 30 years ago? What would I do? I would guess mycotoxins in the cat's canned food or bagged food were responsible. Mycotoxins can affect the thyroid. They are endocrine disruptors. So we changed this little cat's diet. It's 2 years later, 2.5 years now. The cat is thriving, doing great. We spent $1,000 to learn. Would have been a dead cat 2 years ago. This cat is thriving. It gained 2 pounds. Everything's going well. We switched its diet to human diet, folks. We began giving it turkey. You can buy these organic turkey rolls.
in health food stores, and you cook that and you puree some vegetables, squash and so forth, and you mash it all together, and watch what happens in a few weeks to the cat's health. It becomes playful, it runs around again, the bowels start working again. Our cat thrived, gained 2.5 pounds. Women have intuitive natures. Not so much me anyway as a guy, but women have this. After 3 veterinarians saying that's a dead cat, we did what we probably should have done all along. Suspected the food supply as slowly, killing her slowly. Very often, folks, the standards for human aflatoxin and mycotoxins in the diet is quite low. The standard for cats, dogs, horses, cows, pigs is higher. So a tiny animal is actually allowed more mycotoxins in their food? I don't think so. Switch to a human diet, maybe put some drops of chlorophyll in their water, and see what happens a month down the line.
Folks, given that I think asthma and many respiratory problems are linked to mold, mildew, and fungus, just makes sense. Starving the fungus with a Kaufman or a keto diet just makes total sense to me. I'm glad I read that to you. Thank you, Suzanne, for coming in and kind of bearing your soul. It's been a rough road for her, but she is doing so much better now. Imagine a nurse who's gone through physiology and anatomy training, not knowing what's going on in her lungs. Was it mold? You bet. Is it with most people? I believe it is. Does their doctor believe that? Not necessarily. Okay? COVID and histo, it couldn't be that they cleave together. Walking into a bat cave when you're studying a virus, bringing that histo back into the office with you, could they have merged somehow? Just Doug's hypotheses, but it kind of makes sense. And finally, when you feed a dog or a cat foods much like you're eating yourself to stay healthy, that kind of makes sense to me. May God continue to bless you folks. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.